Hello everyone, this is Sri Kante, and today we are diving into one of the most foundational tools in cognitive psychology, the ABCDE model of cognitive change. Now, this model gives us a step by step way to understand how our thoughts affect our emotions and behaviors, and how we can intentionally shift those patterns for personal growth. This model has its roots in the work of Dr. Albert Ellis, who developed the rational emotive behavior therapy, also known as REBT, and Dr. Aaron Beck, the founder of the cognitive therapy. Now, both emphasized a similar idea that it's not events themselves that cause distress, but rather our interpretations of those events. Throughout this presentation, we will break down each step into detail, using examples to show how this model can be used to build emotional resilience, manage stress, and make more empowered choices. Now, understanding the ABCDE model is learning the blueprint for mental clarity and emotional control. And once you learn it, you can apply it across every area of life. Now, let us begin with the A in the ABCDE model, the activating event. An activating event is anything that happens to you, or situation, comment, interaction, or experience that sparks an emotional or behavioral reaction. It's the starting point in the chain of cognitive responses. For example, imagine if you would get a low grade on an important test, or your friend doesn't reply to your message, or you're passed over a role in a play. Now, these are all activating events, but they're not inherently good or bad, but like events that require the interpretation. Now, what's important to understand is that the event itself doesn't cause our emotional response. It's just the trigger. Now, what matters most is what we believe or assume about the event, in which we will cover in the next step. Still, recognizing the activating events is crucial. When we become more aware of what triggers our reactions, we can pause and reflect before reacting automatically. It puts us in the driver's seat of our emotional life. So, as you move forward, I encourage you to start noticing your own activating events throughout the day. Pay attention to those moments where your mood shifts, where tension rises, or where you feel pulled into a strong reaction. That's the first step in building self awareness and in using this model for real personal growth. Now, we move to the B in the ABCDE model, which is beliefs. Now, beliefs are the interpretations and assumptions that we form in response to an activating event. They're often automatic, shaped by past experiences, culture, upbringing, and even fears. And whether we realize it or not, these beliefs are truly drive our what truly drives our emotions and behaviors, and not the event itself. For example, say the activating event is not being invited to a party. One might think, "Oh, no big deal," but maybe they just forgot. Now, another might instantly believe, "No one likes me," or like, "I don't belong." Now, that second interpretation will likely lead to sadness or withdrawal, and or even anger, not because of the event, but because of the belief tied to it. Now, this is where the cognitive dissociations come to play. These are irrational or exaggerated thinking patterns we all fall into at times. Some common ones include all or nothing thinking. Now, let's say if I'm not perfect, I'm a failure. Now, catastrophizing. Now, this is the worst part that could happen. That's what people say. Now, or it could be over generalization. Example: I always mess things up. Or mind reading. Example: they didn't text back, so they must be mad at me. So when we buy into these distorted beliefs, they limit our growth and reinforce negative emotional patterns. But here's the good news: once we can identify these beliefs, we can learn to challenge and replace them. That's the next step in the module model. Um, consequences. Now, for now, the key takeaway is this: it's not the event; it's the belief about the event that determines how we feel and act. And learning to recognize those beliefs is a skill that leads to emotional freedom. Next, we arrive at the C in the ABCDE model, consequences. Now, this is where we see the emotional and behavioral impact of the beliefs we hold up about an activating event. Remember, it's not the event that itself that causes our emotional response; it's our interpretation of that event, and that interpretation can also lead directly to consequences. Now, let's take an example. Say a student receives a low grade on test. Now, this is the activating event. Now, if their belief is, I'm a failure, I'm not smart enough. Now, the consequence may be anxiety, shame, and avoidance. Now, they might stop studying altogether or not show up to class. On the other hand, if the belief is, this this was one test. I didn't prepare well, but I can improve. The consequence could be motivation or and a plan to study more next time. So the consequence is a reflection of the belief. Negative irrational beliefs often lead to outcomes like stress, fear, anger, or avoidance, and more rational, balanced beliefs lead to healthy emotional responses like determination, calmness, or self-compassion. Now, understanding this link is crucial. It helps us take a step back when we are feeling overwhelmed and ask ourselves, what belief led to this feeling or behavior? Now, that moment of reflection is where the transformation begins. Because once we understand, because once we understand our consequences, we can go back and examine the belief that caused them, and that takes us right into the next step, the disputation, where the change truly begins. Now, this is all about questioning and challenging the beliefs that we hold, especially the irrational ones. Remember, these beliefs shape how we feel and act. But what if those beliefs aren't accurate or helpful? That's where disputation comes steps in. Now, let's take a look at an example. Now, imagine someone thinks, I always mess things up. Nothing ever goes right for me. This is an irrational belief and it can cause feelings of sadness or frustration. Now, through disputation, we ask: Is this really true? What evidence do I have that supports or disapproves this? Maybe they remember times when a thing when things went well, like a project that succeeded or a compliment that they received. By considering this evidence and alternative views, they start to see their original belief as too extreme or inaccurate. Now, this helps replace negative belief with something more balanced, like sometimes I make mistakes, but I also have successes. Now, that shift leads to healthier emotions and better choices. Disputation is a very powerful tool because it helps us break free from automatic negative thinking and gain a clearer kind of perspective on ourselves and situations. But last but not least, let us look at the E from the ABCDE model. Um, that's called the empowered perspective, where uh, basically what it means is what happens after we successfully challenge and change our irrational beliefs. Now, when we transform our beliefs into more healthier and more realistic ones, it doesn't just change how we think, it actually makes us more stronger emotionally. Now, this increased resilience means we can better handle stress, setbacks, or difficult situations. For example, instead of feeling defeated after a failure, we might think, I learned something valuable and I can try again. Now, that kind of mindset helps us bounce back faster and keep moving forward. Now, changing our beliefs also improves our relationships. When we stop blaming ourselves or others unfairly and instead see situations more clearly, we can communicate better and connect deeply with the people around us. Now, this shift is in thinking creates a more positive cycle. Stronger emotions and better relationships fuel continued personal growth and a more constructive mindset overall. So, empowered perspectives don't just help us feel better; they help us live better. Now, let us review what we learned about how our thoughts affect our emotions and behaviors using the ABCDE model. Now, the activating event is something that happens to us, an experience or a situation. Next, our beliefs, which is basically about that event, how that event shaped of how we feel and respond emotionally. And those emotional behavioral outcomes are called consequences. Then comes the disputation where we challenge and question any negative or irrational beliefs. Finally, through this process, we can develop an empowered perspective, which is a more healthier and a balanced way of thinking. So, basically, this module helps us understand that it's not just what happens to us that matters, but how we interpret those events. So, by challenging our beliefs, especially the negative ones, we can improve our emotional well being and behavior. Now, disputing irrational thoughts leads to greater emotional control and resilience, helping us respond to challenges more effectively. Remember, the ABCDE model is a practical tool to help us take charge of our feelings and build a more stronger, healthier mindset. So basically this is the practice exercise. So like try identifying firstly these are the instructions. So identify a recent emotional reaction that you had, and secondly, use break it down to break it down using the ABCDE model, giving these questions, and then use the worksheet provided or like write it in a journal and practice it on yourself, and then use it with a friend or a partner. And this is the link given. And yeah, I'll share the slides with you guys. And yeah, this is the assignment for today. And thank you for watching. Bye.